Welcome everyone. I'm JP, in case you don't know me. I'm going to be hosting these mate talk with my mate. So thanks, Andy, for accepting to be here today as our special guest.
Oh, of course.
And thanks, David, Connie, Casey, Babesh, and Peter, our usual panel, for being here. And the topic we chose for today was actually inspired in one of Andy's posts, and he said something like, "The streaming stack works, the revenue stack not yet." And maybe we wanted to spark the conversation there and try to understand, like maybe try to grab some signal over all the noise we're hearing in the industry, and kick off the conversation from there. Like, is actually the delivery or the technology stack in delivery done? Is our main challenge the tech stack or the revenue streams? And I don't know if you want to start, Andy, because you actually posted that. Maybe you can make your statement.
I put a link in for everybody to be able to go find it and see it. I mean, in a nutshell, the argument I made is that, look, the tech stack is fairly solid. Not to say there's not other evolutions that will happen, but by and large, we have a lot of subscribers that are consuming nothing but OTT-based content in some form or the other at this point. But fundamentally, ad tech is still broken, and I would argue that part of it is that they simply tried to lift and shift the tech stack by and large that was designed for broadcast, and it is great in a world where you're just literally broadcasting out content because it's ultimately relatively simple on how that tech stack works for pieces of it. But where you're unicasting, it's not really designed for the scale that's required, and it definitely doesn't have any of the capabilities that we keep talking about, the sort of the personalization of content or the others. It just doesn't handle that, and it just sort of throws more chaos into it. So there's that piece of it, and then there's fundamentally just the business of advertising. Isn't there yet. We're not seeing the dollar demand for what that it would be equal to what you get in broadcast, and so it's been very slow. So it's a combination of improvements to the technical architecture and then a change of the business model or an improvement of the business model. We can't really influence that one from the tech side. But the more we build out the technology that makes it easier or creates the sticky behavior that the advertisers are hoping for, the more likely we are to see the acceleration of that business model adapt.
Yeah, I totally subscribe to it. I'm going to be even like more controversial. I think there's, in my opinion, like collusion between advertisers where it's kind of like if all of us live in the same neighborhood, they don't want the price of the houses to be a certain price, right? Because if they are, then they don't make the commission and things don't work. And I think on the broadcast side, I think that's very much the truth with people who buy audiences, or because the audience are more targeted, they're better, and you can get more value out of it, and you can actually track it, right? You could actually put an impression up and see the performance. And I just think they're just unwilling to basically move the value of the money that they spend on broadcast and give it to digital. Whereas I think indirectly, Meta is proving that they can do that, just on volume and targeting, and our friends at Amazon can do that. So I don't know, I'm going to be a little more controversial and say 100%, Andy's right on, but I just think there's collusion where they just don't want to sort of show that the value of a TV consumer is not as valuable as a digital consumer. That's my personal opinion.
How much of it is like when you're looking at contracts between broadcasters and large cloud providers, they bundle so much stuff together at one shot. How much of the is their advertising like bundled in as part of that, where hey, we're going to give you X amount of ads on our platform as long as you're using our cloud services and blah blah blah. So is that something that's helping keep the prices down, or is there no connection at all?
I mean, I can only speak for Microsoft, and I like there was no partnership or conversations that went between sort of the Azure tech stack and the Xandr tech stack. Very separate business units. And in fact, the most of Xandr never ran on Azure. They were never incentivized to move over and drink from the company fountain. So they ran as a wholly separate entity, much like LinkedIn and others do.
So, Andy, I mean, I think you touched on, to me, I aligned with two kind of key messages. I mean, one is there's the technical element and ultimately the scalability, that it doesn't work and work the same, especially in the world that we're moving towards. And that becomes a big issue. And I think, Connie, you've mentioned some of the issues like you kind of run into with some of that type of stuff as well in the past and whatnot. But then there's also the other issue of, I mean, to me, what it really boils down to is the user experience, right? It sucks. And a lot of that comes from inventory and alignment and personalization and lack thereof. And I get tired of seeing the same ad so many times in one event and so forth. And yes, there's supposed to be things like frequency caps and all these other things, but ultimately there's all this crazy cool technology that generally doesn't either work or isn't used or implemented because it's oftentimes these crazy disparate systems are being patchworked together to kind of figure this out. And I still think there's a major issue of, in my experience, just as a viewer, right, less as a technologist in this, as a viewer, there's still a major issue as far as inventory of ads that are actually good and valuable, and might be of ever interest into what I'm actually ever delivered in the streaming space. And it never was as prevalent and never as obvious in the traditional TV watching and so forth. There's just ads were ads, and they were fine, and they weren't as annoying as I think. And I think that's part of this, is that I think there's a lot more annoyance and less patience in the streaming space for that experience. I think there's potentials for futures of what could help and change some of that. Things like nonlinear ads and being able to create ad experiences that aren't as intrusive and completely overtaking in the linear sense, right? And maybe that will help with, and things now like more like contextual aware ads and more metadata that's really driving some of that, so you can have better alignment or dynamic product placement stuff, right, where they can actually override and insert. Maybe that type of stuff will help, maybe it'll work, but I still don't think a lot of it takes into account the scaling factor that we still run into, and what that looks like. So it's fine at the small side, but then at the small side, like, great, we have the cesspool of programmatic ads. It's like, hey, pick the lowest common denominator here, maybe make 2 cents, and we'll see how that goes.
I think that there's like no control from the content owner at that point of what ad's going to be there and what the quality is going to be going through. And you just reminded me, Dan Rayburn posted today about the Indy 500 experience, and in his article, there's a quote that one viewer said online: "I went to watch commercials today, and I kept getting interrupted by the Indy 500."
Yeah, that was what I was going to bring up. It seems like the ability to, once people have the ability to insert ads, they just want to insert more and more and more, right? Because they want to make more money, but they've driven away me as a viewer. Like I cannot stand it. Yeah, and frequency capping is a thing, but I've been doing some work for a streaming service that I won't name, but they do 10 minutes of pre-roll before they put you into entertainment. And this audio streaming service. And so normally audio streaming, like you listen to it in your car, right? And so if there's any interruption, like a cell tower handoff or something, what happens is you go back into the 10 minutes of pre-roll. And it is infuriating, coupled with the fact that they do not do frequency capping. So
Well, is that an issue of, in some regards, cause or effect, right? Is the issue licensing, and licensing costs have gone so crazy that to balance it out, monetization need of advertising, it's now like, great, putting in every ad insert you possibly can, longer ad breaks, more ad breaks, and like, great, we can do non-linear, so we can drop ads throughout the whole event, right? There's what is kind of the root of that? Or is it just pure greed, right? We want to make more money, we have goals that we need to hit. What drives it? So you need to have a 10-minute pre-roll, and so forth, or is your operational stack so expensive?
I'm privy to, this customer, and yeah, their operational cost is probably higher than it should be. And it's driven by a desire for revenue. But I wonder too, if the value of us as viewers has gone down. when in the broadcast world, right, there weren't people running ad blockers. There weren't people like, I think now we're so inundated with advertisement that our value as a viewer of advertisements has gone down.
Well, I mean, remember I don't think ad blockers would exist if the ads were better, right? And they weren't as intrusive feeling. I suspect part of the problem is still also that they're just not getting the return in a digital world that they were in that broadcast or linear world as well, um, which is causing the frequency increase, right? They're filling additional ads because it's taking 5 ads to get what they got for one placement on broadcast. Um, and that's part of the issue. I think that table is about to turn. I feel like it's been turning, but I feel like we're starting to get even closer to the pivot point because the cable has lost so much on the subscriber side. Everything is starting to be a little more digital first. We're not quite there yet, but within the next couple of years, you're going to see it happening. When I talk to companies like Fremantle, who didn't even have, Fremantle historically has been a B2B business. All they do is do production, create a lot of shows, and then sell it to people who then put it on the air and make advertising against it. They're starting to make just as much money from their fast channel business as they are from the B2B licensing. So they're effectively becoming a distributor, not directly as like an OTT platform, but they're going to have their own linear channels and they're going to make their own advertising deals that have nothing to do with the B2B business. And that's going to start being less interesting to them over time.
You mentioned before about the auctioning off, getting 2 cents, whatever. Did we cause our own problem by creating a I'm gonna call it a cesspool, but like the lowest common denominator for ads, just to get eking every single penny out of the stream that we've valued the content that's there in the first place? Is there a better paradigm to get a better curated ad experience that might?
I hate to put it that way, only because I think the numbers that advertisers were fed from Nielsen for years were horseshit to begin with. And the fact that we can now have data that shows what the real numbers are,
Mhm.
frankly, is less interesting to them in some ways because they liked the voodoo of I'm gonna take and add multiples to this sample set and make assumptions about what my reach is versus being able to look at hard data and say, oh no, it literally reached this group. I have their IP addresses.
Yeah, I think maybe advertising isn't as effective as we thought it used to be.
Yeah, but I
Well,
think you're 100% right, Andy. It's all about accountability. The smoke
yeah.
and mirrors that everybody agreed to what the Kool-Aid was, and that was Nielsen. Okay, we're all just going to adhere to that. And then when accountability comes in, you're like, well, no, not all those people saw it. Not all those people clicked on it. And, you're just trying to bombard with so much volume, just like David said. It's like, why? We're in 2025. Why do I see the same ad on an ESPN pre-roll that I saw 2 seconds ago? Isn't there some kind of system that basically can go and pool? Or is it that a 27-year-old and another 27-year-old, one on the buy side, one on the sell side, is like, hey, let's just drive as many impressions as we can. We don't care about the experience. And there's no relevancy to, Connie getting a different ad than Pete and Pete getting a different ad than Casey. It's like, there's part of me that says it's so freaking lazy, in so many different ways.
Well, it's lazy and they're not super incentivized to fix it because
Right.
they have a business model way to fix it, which is pay us not to see any ads. Great.
Right.
Problem solved. Like give us $10 more a month and you'll never see another Liberty Mutual ad in your life.
And that's the reality, is that oftentimes I strongly believe, and there's been interesting information around that, is that they create these free tiers with the advertising solely to drive more customers to sign up and then get annoyed to upgrade, right? And part of this, once they see the value of the content, they're willing to do that. And the free tier provides an entry path to be able to do that, but they're not incentivized to create a good experience on the advertising path, because the goal is to literally move them to a pay path that they can make more off a subscription versus the advertising. So it's kind of like, cool. Well, if we have the value in the content and we can get people to understand that, we have a better path for upgrade. Andy, in your article, you kind of, I think, touch on also like what you think might be some future solutions and so forth. I mean, what do you think is the best solution that's actually realistic? Or is it no? Like, if this is a business purpose, why would they change it?
No, well, I mean, look, I think ultimately it does change over the next sort of like not even particularly long. Like on the short side, it's sort of 3-ish, 4-ish years. We probably see the business side changing enough that people start investing more on the technology, which then gives us another 2 or so years of fluctuation on the tech stack. But I think the numbers are going down enough on and the viewership in other areas are eroding enough that they're let me take a step back that while all of those are eroding, OTT itself has been so fragmented across so many different properties that we haven't had as much investment. Those are collapsing and merging some, and so we're going to hit a steady state of the core collection, whatever that might be. And I think those are the groups that then start seeing the business model, the premiums on the ads go up, which then gives them the faith to invest in the tech. I wish it was flipped and they would invest in the tech, which would then drive the business. But I'm not in charge of Warner Discovery or Netflix or anybody else. I guess we don't have to worry about Warner, Pete. They're not going to be a Warner Discovery is not going to be a company anymore in another.
Don't tell that to Connie. Don't tell that to Connie. Look, she just
Where's Connie?
blinked
She
out.
just-
Connie's updating her resume. She knows better.
So Andy, last night, right? And I hope everybody's watched it. I watched The Pig for the first time. It was
Yeah.
shot in Portland, and what a great, like, if no one's seen that, you guys got to see The Pig. It's just so well done, and the pacing is maybe slow for people, but it's so good. So I'm at my friend's house in Phoenix, and she has the commercials.
Yeah.
And like, it's slow pans, very melodramatic, and then boom, the ad hits, and I'm like, what is this? Like, no context, no nothing. And I turned to her, I go, you can buy. Do you want me just to give you my subscription so that you never have to see an ad again? So it's so relatable, both on the Portland side, not a great movie, but you're 100%. It was just like so bad. And it does. I think you're 100% right. It's like, let's make it so bad that Pete's going to spend another $5 so his new friend can get ad free. I don't know. It's just so amazing.
And
That was the
this is
Nicolas Cage one, right?
Yeah,
sorry.
so good. So good.
Yeah. And this is the thing, and we're nowhere near ready for this, but I do think there is a world where generative AI can create advertising on demand that matches the pacing of the show that we're watching so that it feels more integrated as a thing and it doesn't feel like it takes us out of the moment. Meaning not that it literally just drops an ad that becomes part of it the way that, the 1950s in Folgers was part of the news and soap operas and others. But I think you can dynamically tweak and alter and update both the look and feel and the pacing. Like generative AI is moving quickly into the content creation space. And I think that it'll be an area where you can effectively almost set up a framework of this is what a commercial is going to look like, but then it adapts a look and feel based on the contextual visual elements and the pacing elements that come out of the content that you're watching at the time.
Well, and that's where
But I
we're,
think
we have a pipeline for that. Oh, sorry. B, go ahead.
I was going to say I was going to put on my as a TA hat for a second, literally. And June is here, and I was trying to get Rebecca to join this call as well. It doesn't necessarily need to be generative AI. They're working on like metadata standards for the stuff as well too, and I'm sure,
Sure.
especially for VOD content, that the type of information about the show, the type of metadata required to generate the ad should be known well ahead of time. If there was and maybe the generative AI is what goes through the VOD content and generates that
Exactly.
the information about the pacing, etc. So then you can create these types of ads ahead of time to say, okay, this is the type of structure we want. Here are the flags that we want. So have ads that match these metadata flags. Is that a standard that needs to be created so that it can, be populated and actually make it a better solution?
Well, and take that one step further. So B, you hit the nail on the head I was going to touch on too, but already we have content aware and now contextual aware encoding as well. If we start leveraging these AI systems that are generating that data up front carry that through and are accessible via the ad systems, then whether it is in the interim, not generative AI, but at least contextual matching. But then towards the future, then we have the ability to generate AI, and we have that data. And it's part of our workflows. Like it's going to be a much better approach. The problem without the generative AI, which I still think is still a big cycle for us, is without good ad content and an effective amount of it, you still run into the issue of like, cool, well, this is the closest I got. I hope you want some commercial on, Viagra, because that's the only option that's there, and it doesn't matter if you've already seen it 5 times or not. So that I think still runs into the issue of where we're at today and how long does it take us to get to where we need to get to. Even if we have these great specifications and so forth, IAB is also working on some of that metadata stuff and going to be working hopefully with SVTA as well on there too.
Mm-hmm.
So let me take like a quick stop here. Like we've been chatting for maybe 25 minutes, and there's like general consensus that the opportunity is on the revenue side, like on the and not on the technology stack, or at least on the delivery technology stack. Yet every time I talk to media companies or media technology companies, like most of the time they're investing on the other part of it. Like most of the presentations I see in conferences like DMAX or My High Video or Streaming Tech Sweden, you name it, these meetups, like maybe advertising or say the revenue stack itself, because it doesn't have to be advertising, it could be other ways of revenue. Like it's probably a very small fraction of it. When we ask all these media companies how much they're investing on Gen AI applied to advertising, the answer is impressively low. So why do we agree on that this is the bottleneck of this industry, yet everyone's working on something else? And feel free, anyone in the audience also, to unmute yourself if you want to share your thoughts. This is an open conversation, but maybe, I don't know, Casey or Connie, if you can and want to comment.
At WPD, right, and perhaps elsewhere in industry, right, we are all under severe cost constraints, right? And anything that requires AI, right, it is highly customized and personalized, right? So the cost, the investment in that cost is high, right? Now, AI is also, the hot topic. So conceptually, everybody wants it, right? But when we do bring forward a scenario and then we break down the cost, now that is where the conversation becomes harder, because at the business level, right, there's always a very high priority to expand everywhere, because that's, you pick up new sub, that's easy money, right? And then when you push comes to shove, now there's a $ next to any project. That is when, like for me, I will have to be able to show where elsewhere within my platform I'm saving X amount of dollars to be able to warrant this cost, because there's simply not a significant amount of budget for incentivized growth opportunities or strategic, tech investments at the moment.
Right. We definitely aren't where we were a decade ago, where they were like, oh, the streaming business can lose hundreds of millions of dollars a year because we're just building an audience. They've moved past that, and there's definitely a bottom line requirement of I need to see the operational payoff, and it has to be a short window.
And I think, this comes back to the earlier point about Nielsen and the black box that could not be believed. Like, we have to get reputable and understandable data measurement back to the advertisers so they can justify the expense that you're talking about, Connie. Otherwise, what's the point? And another aspect, just anecdotally, as a viewer, you see the same set of ads in fairly premium content over and over and over again. And that's because they have bid for that. They believe they'll get a certain return on investment. So it's not like you have a rich inventory of many different advertisers competing for that spot. It's already been won by Liberty Mutual. I don't know about you guys, but I've seen so many Liberty Mutual ads, I think I'm going to choke. So, that's definitely an aspect of it.
But I think there's such a gigantic fear of missing out. I don't know, man. Like,
There is.
Everybody wants to get, it's like the most powerful emotion on the planet, in my opinion, like the fear of missing out. And I think if AI can, there's a really cool company in New York called Connected Stories, and they're working with AT&T, just like Andy said, to create personalized creative based on zip code. So they can do grandma sitting in a rocking
Yeah.
chair, they can do young kid doing esports, and they're all promoting the same thing to click on to sign up for new broadband. And then the crazy part is they can go 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Grandma's not working in the rocking chair. Let's stand grandma up and have her in the kitchen looking at her grandchild playing soccer. So I do think AI will come where this will make it cheaper and more relevant. And Paul, you'll be able to create more ads less expensive, and you'll be able to create so many different versioning of those
Yeah.
ads that everybody
Yeah.
on this call will have a relevant feeling, or it's
Hmm.
tangible to me if I'm
Yeah.
a grandma or an e-gamer or whatever it may be.
I absolutely believe in that vision. I think it's inevitable based on what I'm seeing right now. But you've got to show them the money. You got to show them that the ad with the grandma standing up in 98210 is more effective than the grandma sitting down in 9707, whatever. So got to show them the money. And the big boys are the ones now who have the checkbooks, who can play with this hot shiny new toy. Everybody else is scrapping and have to make harder choices about where they spend on ad production. But the big boys will lead the charge if we can give them the data that proves that it's worth the investment. And the cost, of course, of Gen AI is just going to dramatically drop in the next, 4 years.
I thought you were
I
going to
thought
say
it,
hours.
yeah, hours, yeah, minutes. What I also thought was that interesting, if you guys saw Zuck, he was basically crooning like, well, you'll just come to Facebook and you'll swipe your credit card and you'll just
Yeah.
tell us, what do you want to do? And we'll create the creative for you. We'll target the right audience for you. And then in seconds, you'll see the dashboard of what's reporting and what's not. And if the, whatever, 20 of us on this call were opening a mountain bike store, and sorry, Andy, I'm going back to Portland. And we wanted to basically, where would we spend our money? We would spend our money on Facebook, not on TV. So I think that's the other inevitable, they're just going to continue to make more money. He can go slip on a banana peel, call himself Meta, and try to play in that world. Didn't work. But look at the stock. It's like gone up crazy because it's still the place that people feel is the biggest bang for their buck for the relevancy of the audience and now the different creatives. So I think maybe that
Yeah.
motivates people. Maybe it
Well,
doesn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
is it? I'll add a little thing. It's the biggest bang for the short term buck, because that's what you're going to get X amount of dollars, and no one really wants to do the effort of figuring out, well, if I invest X, I'll actually get a higher return, but 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line, they're like, no, we need the money now. So they're going to go for the short term stuff, even if it means giving up their control over what they want to do and how they want to do it.
Well, I think that's, I mean, it's kind of hit on, like, our industry has been in a phase of cost savings or direct revenue generation are the only two things that they'll consider for investing into for a while, right? Prior, though, the 2018, 2019, there was a lot more also investment into technology, R&D, and future potential, right? For new opportunity. New opportunity can have that longer tail return, but it has a much potential bigger return. Until we get back to there, like, it's a scary place in our industry of like, cool, at what point are we going to stagnate because no one wants to actually invest in new potential? If there's not a direct correlation and high, feeling of probability of return, or it's just too long tail. It's like, cool, we could do that, but it's going to take too long to do that. That's, I think, a major issue for industry right now, as we've been coming out of this. And when will that change? When will there be more of an openness to, hey, great, we are ready to try to adopt some new technology because we know that's going to be powerful for the future, even if it might not have the return today.
So I have a question, and also, and JP, I think you said that anybody can just jump in. Yeah. So question and thought based on some things that you all have been saying. So, Peter, you mentioned earlier, you all live on a block, so you want to make sure that your houses can sell for certain amounts. And then Connie's talking about, well, we would love to do some innovation, but we simply don't have the budget or even the time resource for it. And one thing that I've noticed is with other technologies within the streaming space, like encoding or packaging, or creating automated captions or whatnot, it's super open. Like there's open source libraries out there, there's examples out there, there's all this stuff. And as more of like an engineering hat on, a startup type hat on, I look at advertising, and all the companies are like, they have their walls closed, and it's like, we're the ones that are going to bring the innovation, and we want to hold the keys to the kingdom. Like that's the view I see. So my question is that view somewhat accurate, or am I completely missing, this huge open source community somewhere, or these things that startups can do to kind of disrupt this advertising industry?
So some other stuff to consider, right? So David mentioned scalability, right? So in the world of ads, right, I'm gonna look into SGAI first to make sure my infrastructure doesn't melt down before I add more compute on top of it, right? And some, may not, in some other areas, right, we are also working through how do I gather all those necessary data that's required for us to effectively train the AI model. So not necessarily in the space of ads, right? In content delivery, I'm trying to find an opportunity where I can train the model to identify bots and hackers, right? Or to identify trends where, like the QE is still within the threshold, but it's looking like it may eventually hit our alerts, right? So then the big project that we're doing is piping and standardizing the schema of all my metadata and getting it from everywhere that I need into a consistent space, right? So these are the things that we are working on in preparations for the AI scenarios that I can light up in the near future, followed by
Casey?
radio.
Yeah, I was going to
I
say,
hadn't dropped
Casey's
that
been
mic.
kind of quiet. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you had some thoughts.
I don't have much to add, honestly, from an engineering standpoint. I'll make your ad. I'll make whatever ad system work you give me. I'll get it on the screen. But I'm not part of that decisioning. But I mean, it kind of circles back to some of the stuff Connie was saying. Like, yeah, you guys are saying that the tech stack's done, but I'm constantly working on ad systems. I don't know about you.
That's what I'm saying.
The stack facing the customers might seem like a finished thing, but it's constantly changing. We're still trying to get, sort of guided ads, in a good working order. And then, for me personally, I don't see my company making too many big stabs on unproven technology. Like we're waiting for a merger to go through. So I kind of in a holding pattern as far as that stuff goes.
Yeah, it seems like the opportunity right now in this very tight economy and market uncertainty is going to be some company showing some flashy stuff with AI, getting a bunch of VC, because that's where the VC dollars are going on AI stuff. And that might indirectly help to move the ball forward in terms of improvement and innovation in ads. I don't know anybody in that space right now, but I'm sure there's more than a few in there.
Sometimes it matters of being able to find a partner where we can build a POC, because you got a chicken and egg problem.
Yeah,
right?
for
So
sure.
If we can have that opportunity where we have a POC, then we have data to show it to stakeholders. This is the impact, the improvement that we can offer, right? So those are the opportunity that I am looking at. So like within my existing vendor partners, within the contracts, what are the terms? Do we already have some of those capacities, resources available within the contract? And that's where I will go explore that opportunity.
Connie, question for you and maybe for Casey as well. If you can tell us, the audience here, how are you, what data are you providing to advertisers to prove the value of their investment?
So we tell them about the main content, what kind of main content that they're watching, right? So the genre, different types, as much as we can tell about the main content, because that is not considered, private. But we also tell them about the specific user profiles. So if this is kids versus different adults, as well as their locations, to find more relevant ads. Now, this is not to say that the ads that we are providing to our end users are incredibly relevant, right? I am trying to do a content cleanup, and we found out that we are still serving sometimes ads that were ingested 60 days ago. Might be Liberty Mutual ads, right?
Of seeing ads about events that have occurred a week ago. So they haven't been cleaned up the right way.
So that's information you're providing prior to the ad decisioning. Paul, did you mean that information or also the information
No, these
you provide
are
afterwards?
real time.
Like, okay.
These are basically when the user hit play, the ad decisioning for what ads we will select happens in real time, which is why we have the scalability problem. And then sometimes when you hit the first ad break, especially in the live event, that's if you might observe more rebufferings or potentially failure.
Personalized. I mean, I think that's where SGAI will help out. How do you, if once you get more powerful compute on the edge device, how can you utilize AI on the edge device to help personalize the ad? And one of the ways that it would be amazing to think about, hey, I happen to know, or I know that, blue is my favorite color. So if I see a Toyota or a Chevy ad, the car suddenly is blue. And because I'm watching it on a powerful enough device, I can actually make it render it blue in real time in my ad. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can see myself inside that car instead of just, okay, great, it's a car commercial. Like how is there a future where ads are going to be able to be that personalized, where you can actually know more of the stuff?
But there's also also one of the interesting challenges I think is the enemy of personalization is privacy. Right? So you have a huge trend of like, no, you can't know anything about me. Oh, why do you keep showing me something I'm not interested in? Right? And I know that's on the extreme of that, but that is a factor. Right? There's so many things now, like devices or platforms, even like we try to restrict that. Even doing the work on CMC v2, like there's been so many things we've had to pull away from. Like, ooh, in theory, that could be used for for water, fingerprinting or identification of an individual or their devices. We can't even consider it then, right? It's an interesting balance on that. I don't know when or if or how that's going to get solved because more and more drive against it.
As a consumer, I want privacy and I don't want ads. I want everything to be free. Am I the only person like that? I don't think I am.
No, it's something that I deal with.
And I don't
That's why piracy sites exist.
Well, I also don't pirate, but
I don't want it to be free. I'm willing to pay for it if it's good and worth.
And that's the difference.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to have enough value that it's worth the pay, right?
I think there's a lot of people though that fall in my bucket that don't want to pay.
Right.
But then what? Like these are operations; they have to make money. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree.
Model is not
the
my
majority
problem.
of people don't want to pay, but I think the trends are pretty clear now with subscription models versus ad-supported models and younger demographics going for that free because that's the most important criteria. And they, just like we did back in the olden days in front of our TVs, kind of ignore ads or go get a snack or whatever. Like people will overcome the annoyance to achieve their financial goals of having free TV. I think that's what everything old is new again. We're seeing it again. And I think the more important element is not about cost, but it's like effectiveness. If ads are effective and we can prove them with data to the advertisers that they're more effective, then they will pay more for those ads. And it seems pretty simple.
I really like what Andy said in his article. If we treat ads as content, not an interruption, that will be a very different experience. Because I know how that feels differently when I, watching content from different platforms and when the ads comes up.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting that you can now almost tell which platform you're on based on the ad experience that you're getting.
Yes.
I particularly because like my family's watching Poker Face on Peacock. We haven't watched anything on Peacock in months, and so we just have the ad tier on it. And when I went to watch that, I was like, "Ooh, they need to work on this." It's a little.
Why is it? Where do you see the difference, Andy? Sorry, I don't have peak your wise.
Oh yeah, no. I mean so it's not doing a very good handoff between the content and the ad. So the markers just feel like they're chopped in effectively, and you can tell that there's some bug in the way that they're doing the playback because it doesn't you either get a little bit of a rollback or you lose about 4 or 5 seconds and you end up slightly ahead of where you were on the playback. I don't think my family notices, but as someone who sat and encoded a shit ton of video in his life, you just know,
Yeah.
you just like
There's an opportunity for David there because he
Can we
the
solve that
demo
problem?
you
longer?
presented the last meetup about the like segment accurate ad insertions.
Frame accurate
Frame
ad
accurate,
insertion and
Yeah.
all that.
That
Yeah.
it's mild tangent, but I dropped a link to a book I've been reading by Tim Wu, who, by the way, if you've never read The Master Switch, I will just do a plug for it. Go
Yeah,
pick up The
great
Master
book.
Switch and read it. It's such a good book. And the audiobook of it is also great. Like it's super compelling. I've read it and I've listened to it. And I'm currently reading The Attention Merchants, which is really all about what we're talking about here. And it goes back in history to effectively some of the first advertising, including the advent of posters in France in the 1790s, and the first advertised newspapers that came out of New York in around 1833, which was the first time. Until then, newspapers were just this premium thing. It was basically a journal that you paid 6 entire cents to get, like a bougie bastard. And I think it was the New York Herald was the first paper that dropped the price to a cent so that anybody could go get it, and gave advertising away for like a year to basically show companies that they could uh, gain uh, gain business through advertising versus some other way. And so that was effectively the first time that advertising even got injected into this. Without that, we'd be having a very different conversation. But so fascinating book, and I love the way Tim lays out these historical arguments, and it goes right up to modern times. I think the book was 2018 or 2019, and so he touches on broadcast, cable, streaming.
I think
Neil, you're
coming,
on stage. Mhm.
yeah, coming back to the personalization of ads on two ends, really, that I think the industry needs to do better. And maybe you guys talked about this. I joined incredibly late. But one thing that does not require any feedback from users aside from language preferences, which inherently we know, is making sure that we're localizing advertisements both in audio, video, and captions, right? And the problem there on the opposite end, sure, we could do that, but then you got some advertisers who say, "Don't touch my shit. I don't want you to change it. I gave it to you the way I want to deliver it." But if I'm delivering content in France and my ad is only in French, maybe there's people there who speak English or other languages that still want to hear the ad and understand the ad. Equally as important, the graphics mean nothing if you don't speak the language. So we need to figure out how to translate the graphics as well. And again, back to the ad side, they have no interest 9 times out of 10 in creating anything except for a single language at the cheapest possible cost. So it's this give and take where we need to educate the advertisers who are delivering the content to us that localization or globalization of those ads matter, or let us handle it for you and get an approval and we'll deliver it in that specific language in that region. So I think we can still deliver personalized experiences that don't ask for a lot of data from the user and still give them a better experience.
Hey Juan, can I share my screen for 1 second?
Sure.
So we're starting to work with virtual digital signage on soccer, right? Sports is the biggest thing on the planet. So there's a really cool company called AIM Sports that have dropped their digital signage on multiple of the largest soccer teams in Europe, and this is Real Madrid. So they literally create 12 to 16 different video feeds and will feed different ads by countries. So in a way, it's being personalized by country. And then the next step is they're going to do it by cohorts. So they're going to know by households that if I serve the BMW ad, again, I get the coupe, and one of you guys who has a family gets the 4x4. So this is sort of, in my opinion, where sports will go, where it'll be clean video, but it will basically be targeted by geo, kind of just like Neil said, and then it'll be targeted by cohorts. So I could be in an apartment complex with all of you guys, and I could bounce from floor to floor, and there'll be a different ad. It'll be the same company, same brand, but it'll just be a different creative. And so this is
So
happening now. These
Yeah.
guys got the contract for the World Club games and the World Cup games. So this is sort of a sneaky way, right, to do personalization from a geo targeting and then eventually cohorts.
And
See,
this
is
is
this
being
like
done at the
individual, like-
encoder, right?
Say again?
Yeah.
This is being done at the encoder level, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then they're using AI to see where the players
So-
are on the field and where they can put in the definite virtual
Right.
signage.
So how much does it add to the latency?
Not much. Maybe, a second, a second or two, sort of.
Yeah, I don't
already
It's
even
not
think
necessarily,
it's
I think it's
that
more expense. Now you're paying for 16 different encoders
Right.
instead of just one encode. It's
On top of
it's
it,
an
yep.
expense, it's an investment
Yeah.
to do this.
Yeah,
Right.
one thing in that
AI.
same realm that I'm investigating is similarly, but graphics in production. So create in English, but deliver in every single language and leverage media pipelines out of band to deliver those same exact. We know where the graphics are. We could create metadata from the production switcher that says they keyed this graphic, insert that graphic in the other language that's already pre-approved in all the other languages and gets delivered directly to the device. And if that fails, you have English. So at least you have something there. The score is still there. You're not delivering a totally clean feed, but you are delivering a more premium experience. And not all devices can handle it either, right? So the ones that can, you get that improved experience. And Pete, maybe that's an opportunity to reduce encoding latency, encoding layers, encoding renditions, and all those things, and look at device side delivery instead. I don't know.
That seems nuts. That are we literally talking 16 different encodes?
Yeah.
That's their way of solving it, which
Yeah.
again, I think
mean, it's
the
brute
rational people will be
force.
like, yeah.
But
It-
depends
it-
on the money, because maybe
Yeah.
it's business. It's it's a maybe for World Cup, it's like I don't care about adding 16
Yeah,
encoders
Connie
because
cares.
it pays.
Connie cares.
No, it depends. But the economics doesn't matter for that kind of. Again, it's not Uruguayan soccer. In Uruguayan soccer, for sure, we cannot do that because it's not going to pay off. But having
Yeah.
16 encoders for FIFA World Cup or
Yeah,
whatever,
fair point. Yeah, sure.
yeah, I would
Look,
do it like that. But for
it's not a
tier 3
scalable thing
content,
though. Yeah.
you cannot do it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I think
but
that's
If
the
you
reason
have one
we
event,
see that
I
kind of.
agree.
I think that's the kind of things that of why we see these kind of solutions for Real Madrid, Barcelona, and because there is money over there. There's a lot of money over there for those rights. So, and I think that's the point where we are thinking again. Let's not put the technology on top of the business. So I don't care to add 20, 16, 30 encoders if I would make revenue because it's a really big business for those particular games or
Well, I
athletes,
think you guys
whatever.
talked about something, the bifurcation here. Why do we, does SGI give us an ability to say, hey, look, you know what? If you have the premium type of device, you will get a much better ad experience. And if you have a crappy device that can't handle all this stuff, you're just going to get plain old ads and you're going to have to live with it. Maybe we create a tiering system for types of deliveries. And how does SGI fit into that? Maybe more of a David question.
I wonder, as an example, does anybody know how Apple is doing their ad replacement or in video replacement of the backboards in MLB? Because I'm pretty sure I'm seeing that. I'm seeing overlay on the mound, and I'm seeing behind the batter, advertisement that's stitched in. Does anybody know how they're doing that?
Fairly certain at some point it was a scenario where the contribution encoder in the arena has some extra GPU and is doing an analysis where it's effectively doing like a placement marker in frame of where something's going to go, and then that metadata gets passed with the live feed, and then the cloud encoder can take that and effectively use it as like a billboard placement within it, and it's got this continuity, of both where it is by coordinate and time, that they can make the adjustments for fitting it in. So it's a bit of a two-step process. You have to do some conditioning on the front end, and then the cloud has to know how to accept that and utilize it as part of the final render.
We're kind of running out of time, and I don't want to take more time from the audience here, because I know we committed for 1 hour. But it's definitely been an interesting conversation. Definitely, everyone has something to say about revenue and advertising. We're definitely gonna continue chatting about ad tech and where the revenue stack is. I agree with you, Casey. There's yet a lot to do on the other part of the tech stack, because actually that's what we all do every day. But maybe if you want to say, if any of you here want to share like a closing remark, like any insights or anything you're taking from today's conversation, and we can maybe start with you, Andy, what your thoughts are.
I think the biggest one is it's conversations like this that will drive the technology in the direction we want. There is a lot of, particularly when you talk to Silicon Valley companies, they think the technology is creating the culture, and culture needs to create the technology that we need as part of it. And it's the people in this room, virtually speaking, that are going to solve the problems.
David, Casey, Connie, Babesh, anything you want to add? I know it's difficult to add something after.
I can't top that. No one can
Yeah.
top that.
Sorry,
That's a mic
guys.
drop. That's a mic drop.
So, Andy, do you want to share with us maybe your cocktail of the day? Like, what should we drink afterwards?
Okay, so I will say this weekend we had friends over, and we had a bit of a riff on a tequila drink. Ruby red grapefruit juice, tequila, little bit of Cointreau, a rosemary simple syrup that I made, and a pear brandy.